All right. You guys should be able to hear me. Go ahead and pop this on so you guys can see me here. You guys should be able to see me. Okay. We are going to, let me get StreamerBot out of the way here. I just wanted to have him on in case anybody has any questions or any of that kind of stuff. And what I was going to do today was walk you guys through kind of a presentation I've given a few times and I've added to it over the years. And we can kind of talk about some of these different pieces that are out there and that kind of stuff around getting into the engineering field, how to excel in the engineering field if that's something you want to do. I think if you want to get into the engineering field, you probably do want to excel in it. So, all right, so let me move this out of the way. The presentation I've got up for tonight is Excelling in the Engineering Field After College, presented by Scott Champagne, me. But I'm going to tell you that this is a kind of a template that I did for some of my college students years ago, and I've modified it for us, and I'll say for anyone. So if anybody wants to get into the engineering field and you say, hey, Scott, what do I got to do? You know, I've joined the Prolog, I've done the courses, I've been on Killer Code, I've gotten hands-on, and I know Linux, I think. So how do I go get into the engineering field, and what does that kind of look like? So, hey, Fisherman, how's it going? Yeah, so you don't get fined, and also use your Prime here.
I'm just here so I don't get fined.
You're, I appreciate you being here. So let's get into this a little bit. Some of you guys have seen this presentation before, but a little bit about it is, you know, what are we doing here? You know, if we want to learn how to do something, if we want to get better at something, if we want to, again, excel at something, how do we do that? So one thing to understand is kind of education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. So if you're going to get into engineering, if you're going to do specifically the type of Linux and systems engineering that we do, you are never going to stop learning. That's all there is to it. Like, I remember being so giddy when I got out of high school and I was going in the Army, and I was like, I never have to sit in a class again. And then I thought, oh, I'll go to college and then I'll never have to sit in a class again. That's not the way it is. I'm going to training like in 2 weeks for work, and then I'm giving training like a few weeks after that for a project that I've built for one of these big government customers. And it's like you're always going to be in a classroom. That's always going to be happening. You're going to be imparting information. You're going to be taking in information. I know some of the guys actually here that have talked have written blog posts for their company. Like, there's always some shared information flowing around in the system. So I just, you know, really need you to know that you don't just fill it up once and then sit there and always draw from that bucket. That's not the type of engineering we do. That may work in maybe some types of architecture and maybe some base mechanical engineering where some of the functions are never going to change and you're just going to use the same math over and over again. Sure, maybe, but not in what we do in Linux. Things have changed so much in the last 25 years. There's whole different ways to administer Linux systems than even the ways that I use. So I try to acknowledge that and let you guys know that there's all these things that you need to study and think about and learn. So this is the little random quote to get you interested from William Butler Yeats. And then let's talk about what I think engineering is and what the value of it is to a company. Because, well, like, why does a company want to pay me and Fisherman and some of these other guys like a lot of money compared to other people in the company? Why would they pay us a lot of money to just sit around, right? Like what value do we add? And this is really like one of those things when you guys hear me talk about I don't know, incident management, when you hear me talk about security, when you talk about whatever, I always talk about the central problem. What's the main thing? Well, in this case, we want to get hired. What's the main thing that a company hires us for? And over here on the top bullet point, I say we're engineers. We deal in truth. That's not like esoteric. That's not like some platitude, me like floating, you know, up on top of some mountain, like some, you know, some kind of, you know, person practicing some type of ancient religion. Nope. It's we deal in ones and zeros. Something is set correctly and working, or it's not. Those are the values, right? Something's good, something's bad. So our utility or value add to a company is directly related to what we know and how quickly we can get the right answer. So in the automation course that some of you guys are doing, I've been talking about just doing quick and dirty one-offs, and that's what this lab is this week, is like just pulling information out of a system and seeing it and touching it quickly. That's a thing that you have to learn how to do, right? That's a valuable thing. But as engineers, we deal in truth. What is the truth? Kind of the currency that we spend within a company as engineers is what is accurate. And I tell people, like, in fact, it comes up here later. you need to have things be above reproach. Nobody can ever come back later and say you gave them bad information, because you know what happens if you keep doing that in an organization, right? Nobody's going to ask you, and then soon you're probably not going to be with that organization, right? Yeah, AI. So the middle one is sometimes we're called on to answer the best technology to some random problem. Maybe we need to go do some research, or maybe we know tools that are out there. And then sometimes we have to do make, build, or adopt type policies. So make is we build it in-house. So make, what did I say? Make, build. Did I say make, build? Sorry, make, buy, or adopt. Right? Buy, you go buy it from a company fully built, and then you have to cater it to your organization. I don't know why I said make, build, make, buy, and then adopt. You say, what the heck is an adopt? Adopt is one of my favorite ones. Adopt is like you bring in some open source tool, right? And this is big for us, right? We're like, hey, we love open source, but what if somebody's not maintaining it? What if you can't have a support contract on it? That's a stop on a government project. If you don't have somebody to call and somebody on any piece of software that you have, it's a no-go. Can't even bring it into a government system. I don't know if you guys knew that, but that's true. So anyways, sometimes we're called on to answer things. Sometimes we have to troubleshoot. Troubleshooting is huge for engineering. Being able to look at the way that an engine's supposed to cycle and figure out that it stopped at that last piece and it didn't give the output that we expected. It was above or below the upper control limit of whatever tolerances we expected, and it didn't work. Okay, well, now I got to go troubleshoot why. Were the inputs bad? Did something actually break 3 steps earlier, but it just continued on until it failed there? These are things that can happen. So there's all kinds of things, right? And there's root cause analysis where we keep asking why and all these type of things. But as engineers, we have to solve problems. We solve problems for companies. In fact, I tell you guys often, and some people probably think I'm being a Chad about it, but it's true. I said Chad, but anyways, it's I get pulled into things that have nothing to do with me, nothing to do with Linux, nothing to do with the systems I work on. Sometimes I get pulled into other stuff, and the reason is because I'm the type of person who will troubleshoot and fix stuff. I'll throw a diagram up on a talk like this, and then we'll walk through the diagram and we'll drive towards the right answer. And that's an important skill to have if you want to be an engineer. And then I say, to the point of this, that's our value to a company, what we know and how we get to the right answer. Our goal then, if we want to get hired, right? Because people always ask me, hey, Scott, how do I get a job? How do I get into the field? I know Linux. I've been playing with Linux for many years, but nobody's given me a shot. Well, our goal is to figure out how to keep ourselves ready to do this, how to present to a business those things, right? This focuses on this part of the talk that I'm going to do is this focuses on getting yourself ready, but we have another talk that we do where we talk about how you kind of present that to a business, right? And like we talk all the time about resumes down in the chat and that kind of stuff. So these are things that are important. I think this is something that's valuable to me. Knowing what I do and why somebody wants to pay good money for us, right? All right. So then here's a little bit of our overview. This is all about continuing education. So again, I originally said excelling in the engineering field after college, right? But then I said for anybody. But let's say you get into the industry. What are you going to do to continue to educate yourself? So here's my thoughts on it. I think you should learn how you learn. I think people learn different ways. I think people sometimes think that they learn a certain way, but then they find that, no, I'm just like the masses. 95% of people actually do excel in this format more than this other one. And I probably should just accept that I'm not neurodivergent and doing this and this and this. And for me, it's best to do. No, that's probably not true. You probably learn the same way as everybody else. And hearing somebody talk through things and see it and then touching it with your hands, you're probably, it's like a kinesthetic learner or whatever that kinesiology is, where you talk about how people move things. Sometimes when you touch things with your hands, it helps you remember it, right? There's an old saying, I see, I forget. It's I hear, I forget. I see, I remember. I do, I understand. That's an old teaching adage, which I think has some merit to it, right? Maybe not any real weighted study to it, I'm sure, but I imagine hearing things, it's good, and then seeing it as well helps more, and then as you do it and play with it, right, you start to understand the thing. So learning how you learn, very important. I talk about certifications and things that are out there to just bolster a resume and for you to. This is one of the things where I always tell you guys, it's not about like just learning the terminology. It's not about just being some robot that can regurgitate stuff. It's also about being able to understand what we call the body of knowledge, the BOK. So the project management body of knowledge is called the PMBOK, PMBOK, and then something like this. So certification, so you understand completely some security model, or you understand completely some way that your company is going to interact with AWS or something. These are why we get certifications, right? To understand the body of things. People will tell me all the time, but having certification doesn't make you smart. I know that. I didn't say it does. But if the company is looking for somebody who understands things in the terms that they need, you might be the smartest person that's ever applied there. But they want somebody that can come in and start working on the tool. You might learn it in a week, who knows? But the point is, if you could have learned it in a week, you probably could have went and taken the cert too. So my point in telling you that is certifications are valuable for a company to have a measure, right? It's one of these things where I tell you guys all the time that you got 10 more people, that all look good, but you're having your second round interviews and you have to narrow it down to 2. Somebody has to make a cut somewhere. You're milling around here, and somebody finally has to make a cut and leave only 2 of you left. Well, in my mind, I want as many positive differentiators as I have. If the company says they require a bachelor's degree, but they liked everybody, I don't know why they would let them interview if that's a hard requirement, but let's just say they did, that might cut 5 of them off right there. Now they only have 2 left to decide out of the 5, and it makes it a little easier. I want as many positive differentiators as I can, right? So that's a thing to think about, and I'll show you guys a bunch of free certs and stuff that I think are valuable. Also, this is up in the Discord, so if anybody needs it, if you're like, oh, he's got all these links and stuff in there, but he's not sharing it with us, it's all up in the Discord. So if you guys need it, go grab it. Discord has, we're getting close to 4,300 people, so we're kind of still slightly going up over time. And then I think you should build a home lab. I think you should have a home lab that you work on stuff that's interesting to you, that's also in the field that you want to go into. Like if you told me, hey Scott, I really want to be a signal engineer. I just 20 minutes ago I finished a signal engineering class that I'm teaching at a college. And if you said, Scott, I want to get into signal engineering, what do you advise? And then I give you a bunch of tools, let's say, and I show you a bunch of stuff to read. And then, I would tell you also to get these tools and start practicing and get some hands-on with it. We're going to talk about kind of how we touch and get proficiency in things here in a second, but you would do that in a home lab. You can do that in a home lab. And nowadays, in the modern world, it's also very cheap to just go run stuff out in Azure, AWS, Google Cloud Platform. We were talking about Oracle Cloud. Oracle Cloud's coming up, I guess. I just heard today, I don't want to be telling tales out of school, but I just heard they were just talking about Discord a little while ago. I guess until the end of this month, Oracle is doing all of their certs for free. I think all their training and all their certs are free. Now, that's only 2 weeks, and some of you are probably going to be like, man, that's too short. But to go get the basic cert, I bet most of you could probably work that into a 2-week schedule. And then if you get to take the cert for free, that's a pretty good little value. But get yourself a lab, certifications, labs. You practice on stuff. You don't have to spend a lot of money on a lab. I just spent a bunch on a lab piece of equipment, but I did that so that we could have more servers internally, right? Because we run a lab that anybody can get into and do Linux work on. I think you should have a book collection. I really do. I think that you should spend time. My thing about books is this: like, there's Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow has inarguably, like, I wouldn't even have this argument with you. If you said, Scott, I think you're wrong about this, I'd be like, all right, well, I guarantee everybody else in the industry agrees with me. Stack Overflow is the reason the internet still works. Like, Stack Overflow is like where all of us went when we had a kernel 4.6 problem. It doesn't matter. Stack Overflow is great. Google and AI are coming up and this kind of stuff, but you find all these errors. There's still errors. There's still a version of something in Stack Overflow that's not there. And just the rigor and correctness of a book and a reference. Like, I have Perl reference books that I haven't opened in 10 years up there from when I used to write Perl all the time. And it's like, it's great to have like a reference. Now, was a lot of that on the internet? Sure. But the exact thing I might need could be found in my book. Oh, Fisherman, you said OCI certs have been free for a while. That's probably true. The guys were just talking about them earlier, and somebody mentioned something was free until the end of this month. It was up in the certification channel. Paying somebody to take them. That's funny. Shania, how's it going? So we were talking about book collections, and then maybe I tell everybody, maybe the most important thing I can tell you to do, if you took nothing else away from this, even if you listened to this and then you shut this down and said that guy's just not for me, sure, industry discussion groups, blogs, posts, podcasts, open source community, find somebody that resonates with you. I tell you guys, when I was a kid out here in Phoenix, there was this thing that used to always come on in the 80s. There was these commercials that would always come on for mental health. There was this big mental health clinic, had, I think, hundreds of clinics everywhere. It was called Charter. And they used to say at the end of the commercials, if you don't get help at Charter, please get help somewhere. And I just think about that, and I'm like, if it's not me, if you can't stand Fisherman or his little bot in the Discord, find somebody that resonates with you for talking about this stuff. And when I literally was just telling my students this, if you want to talk like an engineer and sound like an engineer in an industry, do you know what you do? You go sit with the engineers and you listen to how they talk. It's like the woman Jane Goodall, I believe her name was, it just Dr. Goodall, that just died. She went and sat with the gorillas off to the side until the gorillas kind of accepted her, and then they pulled her in, and then it was all good, right? And then she was one of them. It's the exact same way with engineering. You're going to hang out with the engineers, and one day they're just going to be like, and actually most engineers probably will bring you in quicker than that, but there are engineers that are kind of standoffish. They're mostly like the older ones, but I think you'll be able to get it in there. So, okay, Atticus, how's it going over on the YouTube side? This isn't a super, this isn't super important day here. I'm just talking through a lecture because this is simple for me. I don't have to think too much about anything. I have a lot to do on my dissertation, so like I'm super behind on that, but this is letting me just zone out and brain dump on you guys. So, and then the last one I tell you is, if there's nobody there to mentor you, if you look around and there's nobody at your company or organization to mentor you, start mentoring the junior people. Start writing documentation that you would have wanted when you came on. I tell engineers all the time, like, probably one of the number one things that I see, even around the best engineers I know, is they still, even as really good engineers, don't write documentation that they wish they had. Right? Maybe they write it for themselves, but they don't like publish it. And I'm like, publish that stuff. Put it into your internal wiki. Like the company already thinks you're a rock star. Go start throwing that stuff in there. And some organizations really train people to do that because it's important, and that's a form of mentorship, passing your information down. We always talk about like tribal knowledge. Well, only that guy knows it, and only that guy knows that. That is the death of an organization. That is a death of uptime in a system. Because if only one guy knows how to fix it, he's in a coma. What if he had to go under for surgery? We had a guy just a month ago in NOAA. I wouldn't call him irreplaceable, but he was pretty solid guy, and he just had a heart attack. 55. 55 is not that old to have a heart attack. That's pretty young still. I mean, I'm 44, so I hope that's not a. Anyways, but the point is, he just had a heart attack, and I took all his extra work over. And then another guy just left. A guy who was absolutely irreplaceable just left our team like 2 Fridays ago. He left on. He didn't die. He left. Just quit. Didn't pass any information on. Didn't whatever. I took all his work too. So it's like, my point in saying that isn't to make you guys feel bad for me for taking a bunch of people's work, but it's like, you don't want an organization to just be tied to 1 or 2 people who answer all the questions, because one day that person's going to stop answering that call. People are like components. All components fail in systems always. People fail eventually too. I hear, yeah. So let's talk about how we learn. I know that everybody thinks that first line is true. And in fact, if I asked everybody here, everybody thinks they learn different than everybody else. Everybody thinks they're that like maybe 1 to 5% that learns really good on their own. And I'll tell you, all of modern recorded history shows that when people are together talking and discussing ideas in a academic, somewhat safe to debate and argue, right? Knowing the right types of argumentation and way that we debate things, almost 100% of the time, those people find that this is where you learn best, when you're up in the fire, right? I was talking about that lighting of a fire, not a pail. When you're close, when you're a coal that's up close to other fire, have you guys ever seen a coal fall far from a fire pit? goes cold while all the rest of the fire's still over there burning. It's the same kind of idea. Exxon, you said, what is your opinion on LLMs coming as tools? Does people's skill matter more? Exxon, I don't see LLMs taking over admin and engineering roles. I really don't. What I do see them doing, and I know Fisherman over on our Twitch side, he uses them for this, and this is kind of the best way I've seen people do it, is LLMs to grab data and be like a study partner. So like if I right now had to study for my CISSP, I could go grab all of the course objectives for the CISSP, and maybe I can't feed all the course objectives for all 8 domains in, right? But maybe I take the first domain and I feed those course objectives in, and I say, hey, help me out to study for my CISSP. Can you help me study? And it will generate and talk through things. And I'll say, and this is actually, I've talked to quite a few people on our Discord that are doing this, and they'll say, well, I don't understand that Bella La Padula model that you just showed me. I don't understand it. Could you explain it to me in a different way? And it's like, oh yeah, it's actually, this is a discretionary access versus a mandatory access control system. And a discretionary access control system, the people who own the data can change it any way they want. In a mandatory access control system, it's assigned by whatever permissions. And whatever the differences are, there's a lot of differences between the two models that are common. But some of you may not, let's back up for a second. Some of you guys probably use Linux a long time and don't know that Linux is a mandatory access control model. You might not have even known that. By the way, you can be a really good engineer and never have known that. Right? But my point is, like, I think the chat GPTs and those kind of things are really good for studying Exxon. So hopefully that's something that I think I'm using it to help me format certain things for even the work that we're doing in the automation course, right? I'm not using like Chat GPT or anything, but I've got like a whatever that built-in little code pilot is inside of my what is that tool? Whatever this tool is, VS Code. In here, I think I told you guys a few months ago, just turned on and started working. And I'm like, and then I was reading about it a little bit, and it's like, you have 3,000 requests a day on this for free, and I was like, I'm never going to go near 3,000 of that, but that helps me write stuff. So stuff that I've written thousands of times over the years. I just don't have like all the notes of it and stuff. But Ekshanya, hopefully this stuff's useful to you. That's always the goal. But everybody thinks they learn different. But let me posit that maybe most of us still learn better when we all kind of get around the campfire and talk through things and have different experiences with stuff and some of these other models. So I would tell you these are the things that are going to always help you right here. Figure out the schedule that works best for you. If you tell me, Scott, I want to be a writer. I'm a writer now. I want to be an author. I want to be a published author. The first thing I would ask you, and I'm stealing this from somebody from 20 years ago, how much have you written today? And if you tell me no, I'm going to look at you and go, I don't know how much you really want to be an author. Now, if you tell me I wrote 5,000 words this morning between 4:30 and 5:30, then I went to the gym and then I went about my day, I'd say, well, that does actually sound like somebody that wants to be an author. That person will probably one day be an author. They're working, they're writing, for an hour every day, sitting there just typing away at their keyboard, getting words on the paper. Yeah, you got to edit it and you got to learn all that stuff to do later, but there's all kinds of stuff around that I think you can learn. There's projects, I really like the NaNoWriMo project. In fact, what are we in October right now? In November 1st, if you want to write a novel, NaNoWriMo will help you do it. It's NaNoWriMo. Yeah, just like that. NaNoWriMo. Great little, I remember probably 15 years ago I did it, and I got 180,000 words or something in a month. I didn't even finish my novel, but I wrote one, right? And this was years ago. So anyway, figure out the schedule that works for you. Do you need a Pomodoro timer to keep you on track? When I'm trying to be on track for something, I have to set a timer on my phone. I have to do it. Otherwise, I'm squirrel. I've multiple monitors. I got another computer over here behind me. I'm doing too much stuff, right? Can you sit and watch videos? Can you learn by listening to? I always tell you guys, like, if you tell me, hey, Scott, I want to learn AWS, but I can't pass that Solutions Architect Associate or Solutions Architect Pro is just too high. They've got reInvent videos. You want the most current ones that you can, but they have literally like over 100 hours, probably even if you go back a few years, but you want the most current ones, probably have over 100 hours of reInvent videos from the last year. Probably even a few hundred if you go back a couple years to help you understand, You know, what are all, because if you say, Scott, what are all the database topics? I guarantee you all the database topics were talked about on reInvent. All the things that are going to show up on a solution. Well, I have a Solutions Architect Pro, so I can 100% tell you that that's 100% true. The things that they ask you about are the things that they talk about at the reInvent. Why? Because that's the things that the customers are dealing with. The things that they're doing. Hold on, I missed a question over here. Hold on. There's a question on Twitch. Sometimes frustrated as you learn something, but later you need to recap because you stop using X or concept and like, damn it, man, I knew. Yeah, I joke around all the time. Like, I'll look at stuff and my name will be at the top of it and I'll be like, I don't remember writing this. One, it's a hot mess that's not sustainable. And two, man, was that guy smart or something? Because, like, I don't know what any of this stuff is. And then it'll be my name at the top and I'm like, oh my God, did I really do that? And I do that all the time in my life. But this is another one. You don't find time, you make time. If you tell me, hey, Scott, I want to go to the gym every day, and I'm like, well, have you gone to the gym every day this week? Right? You have to make time. You have to get up and go do your thing, whatever it is. Like for me, I know for a fact, I know 100% for a fact I cannot go to the gym at night. I can't do it. I don't want to. Probably drank too many monsters for the day and I'm not, nope. I get up in the morning at 4:20, take a shower, go to the gym. Say, why do you take a shower before the gym? Because I wrestle, so I don't want to be stinky, right? But, well, I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but a little daily is better than cramming once a week. That is probably one of the best pieces of advice in this slide that I can give you. Doing a little bit and thinking about things a little bit every day, right? Eating that elephant every day as opposed to trying to eat it on Sunday night. I tell people all the time, people try to cram on a Sunday night and you're just not going to get stuff done that way. You're not going to gain traction and then you got to realign your thoughts to just that for a few hours or something. But if you did it even 15, 20 minutes a day, you would drive something much more forward, I think. I really do. That's how I study. Like, I study things, and cramming is not a great way of doing it. Cramming is great to pass tests, but cramming is not a great way to learn things in the long run, right? Figure out what you're interested in. We've got a self-assessment that's free up in the Discord. If you guys wonder where that is, there's, let's see where this is here. Here's our Discord, right? Oh, come on, Discord. And then down here, if you were to go to like our presentations, here's all of these old presentations that different people here have done. And the ones that I'm talking about here are, there's just all kinds of configuration. What is this? Why did I do that? Socratic stuff and Linux Systems Admin. This is the talk that we're doing right now, or an older version of it. And then do I have myself? There's a self-assessment right there. It's a 11/17/2023. So it's a little bit dated now, but it's, you know, if you guys want to see it, I'll show it to you, right? But it's that's more like, what do you want to do in the industry? How do you fill the gap between what you know how to do now and what you want to do? This one, what we're talking right now in our talk, is more about excelling and staying kind of sharp in engineering, which I really think that you have to focus on. You have to do it because you're just not, like, 20s and 30s, like, maybe your mind stays sharp. I mean, I had probably one of the best memories of people I've met when I was younger, but in my 40s, that is not true anymore. I forget where things are when they're in my hand, right? That was never the case in my younger years. So anyways, my point is, take self-assessment, work on projects that allow you to do what you're interested in. And we'll get into that later, but like, it doesn't all have to be like, I know some of the guys talk about like doing networking and they're like, oh, networking was so boring. Or, oh, I studied for my CISSP and I fell asleep. That probably wasn't like, just dry grinding your CISSP is probably not good. I could show you guys right now. There's a thing called the Sunflower document. I love it. It's free. It's open on the web. You can share it with anybody as long as you give credit to Martin de Frankenreicher, who wrote it. It was Martin de Frankenreicher. Anyways, it doesn't matter. He published this thing, but it's dry. It's really dry, but it's got all the topics you need. It's all downhill Q. Yeah, it is. Figure out what you're interested in. So anyways, learn how you learn. Here's one that I posit. This is a way that we look at it in the academic world, right? Some of you guys know that I deal in academia quite a bit. Not just that I'm working on my dissertation, but I've been passing along information to engineers for, it'll be 17 years in December. So I've been saying 17 years, but it'll be 17 years in December that I've been teaching at the college level. And this is the model that we kind of use to teach people things. The first level of understanding, or the first level of Bloom's taxonomy, this is called Bloom's taxonomy, is remembering things. Can you remember, you know, if I wanted to teach you Linux, I would teach you that there's a bash shell. That's how you get into a system. I may even tell you that there's like cat, ls, pwd, I don't know, cp, mv. There's just all these basic commands. And at the very base level, I would tell you, okay, you're going to move stuff around, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. You're going to have these different file systems. They're generally these things. And maybe at the first level, when you're first kind of picking it up, you're really just identifying all the things. Yeah, I know some of us jump in and immediately start doing Linux, sure. But if I was trying to teach it to somebody who's it's completely foreign to, remembering and kind of understanding those first two levels are the ways that we kind of start. And understanding can be ideas or concepts, like when we boot up and start a system, we start a kernel, the kernel loads init ramfs and starts to build up all the things that it needs, and then it does a switch route onto whatever disks are going to be, well, they don't have to be disks, but disks are commonly what they are, where the root of the file system and where the kernel is going to have control of everything, right? And this may be like maybe the most base thing that we start talking about. And then you say, well, that was really high level. Well, where does the kernel operate out of? Well, it does everything out of /proc. /proc is this directory that has all of the processes that the kernel is interacting with. All the file handles that are open are defined in there. And then we could start to go walk through and dig in, right? Maybe after I've talked about it a little bit, I start to show you, right? I say, well, we go down into proc, and then now here's the file systems, and then we could go, or here's the processes, and we can go into like process 17, and we could see what process 17 is doing. And then maybe whatever's going right, and the point is, I could start to build on these base things that you understand, right? So this is like the beginning of how you learn things, and I think it's very valid. If you were telling me, hey Scott, I want to learn, okay, something that I could teach is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? And I would tell you the first thing. Well, first, everything's going to suck for a long time for you, but the first thing is maybe to know all the positions, know all the places you can be underneath or on top. And then start to understand how they flow together, right? Understand that there's sweeps and there's all these things that can happen to you, right? And mostly things are going to be happening to you for a long time in the sport before you get into doing anything else, right? But anyway, so that's that. And then it's starting to like apply, right? So by the way, at the bachelor's level, you are mostly doing 1, 2, and 3. You are remembering and understanding things, and you're applying them to maybe everyday problems and stuff. But this is like at a college thing, this is like the first 3 levels as a bachelor's degree. The 4 and the 5 tend to be your master's degree, in case you're wondering, and then creating new information, that is your PhD, your dissertation type stuff, in case anybody's wondering. But the point is, you keep going further and further up this model as you have more and more understanding, right? You can apply the information to different scenarios. Then you start to, so applying could be, I come to you and I say, okay, I need a server that does, something, and it does it securely. And you say, okay, I can apply the things I know to build a Linux server. Scott showed me how to boot up a Linux server, build it. I can secure it in a basic way and then give it to you, and you can SSH into it. Okay, cool. That's applying. But analyzing would be this. You've done that enough. Maybe you've planted enough Linux servers out in the world. You've done 10,000 now or something. And I might say, hey, I need you to do this in the most secure way possible. And then you're in a call with me and you're explaining to me that, like, okay, we need to have an SSH bastion, and then once you get into the bastion, I'll drop you into these other nodes. And somebody pipes up and says, well, I actually think this way's better. And it's like, well, could you analyze and then justify that position? Why, what are the merits of your way over another way? Oh yeah, they all work. Like, there's a bunch of things that work in engineering, but why is your way best? Why is it best to have in a systems that I know well, why would it be useful to have a closed bolt or an open bolt firing system in certain types of tools? tools that exist that lock before they fire, and some just fire from an open bolt. What would be the advantages of each? And don't even worry what those tools are, but they're tools that exist that behave these two different ways. And could you justify one is right or the other is right? Another one, huge for people. In fact, this is probably this is one of the reasons that I don't like when people just pop in and tell me, oh, I should do it this way. And I'm like, oh, motherfucker. Because they're jumping right to evaluating, right? They're jumping right to defend your position to me on why you used the tools you did. And I'm like, I have to go through all this to even get to this for you, right? And that happens often in the tech world, right? People just drop in here and they're like, oh, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And I'm like, oh, I don't even have time to explain to you the things that you don't know about what I'm. Anyways, so where I'm going with that is just fine. And then creating is like producing something new, right? You're doing research and you're adding to the body of knowledge and that kind of stuff. So learning how you learn is tremendously important. And you may again back here, you may say I learn different than everybody else, but I'm going to tell you right now, if I told you to build something with Legos, one of the first things you would probably need to know is what a Lego is and how they connect to each other. Now, most of you would pick that up like that as soon as you saw Legos, right? But if you didn't know that, you definitely can't get up here until you've done some work with them, is my point. All right, so learning how you learn is important. This is more of a task-based thing. This is more of a proficiency in the ability to execute a thing. This is what we call the conscious competence model. I learned about this in college too, and it was actually funny. My teacher called out one day in my undergrad. I remember I was sitting at DeVry, I was in my undergrad, and one of my teachers had called out. So this other teacher pops in and he goes, I don't know any of this tech stuff, but here's something that's useful that might stick with you. And this legitimately stuck with me. He drew this on the board. I think he might have even drawn it as a square, which is fine because mine is both circles and squares. But you start somewhere at unconscious incompetence. And that can be for any task. It could be like, I want to go out in my garage and start working on a car. And I start out down here. I don't know anything about anything. Don't know anything. I think the engine's not engineering. I need to learn how to do it. Right? Hey, Robodom, how's it going? And Q, you're exactly right. Learn by doing, but so does everyone. People can learn a lot just by reading.
Hello.
People need, I think hands-on is the way that I remember things best for sure. But you come in and you don't know things, you don't know components of things, you don't know how things interact, you don't know how they're supposed to work, you don't know how they're busted, whatever. You're unconsciously incompetent. You don't even know what you don't know. Then you move up here, you circle around this way, and you move up here to conscious incompetence, and now you start to you open up the manual on the engine or whatever, you open up TLDP, which tldp.org is the Linux documentation project, and you go, huh, that is the weirdest. That is not what it is. It's tldp.org. But anyways, you go and you see, oh shit, look at all this. There's 38 chapters on just how Bash works. Oh my gosh, I don't know any of this. Well, now you're conscious of your incompetence. You don't even know how to type a command into a terminal, right? You're conscious of it, and you know you want to learn it. So then you start moving over here where you start to develop proficiencies and you're studying things and you're understanding how components work in a system and you're building up. But this is what we call conscious competence. You have to actively think to get your job done. But then you move down here to unconscious competence. You can do things without even thinking about it anymore. An example of this that I really always have liked is like teaching somebody how to drive. Like, you're unconsciously incompetent. You sit down in the driver's seat of a car, and the only thing you've ever done is sit in the passenger side or in the back when you're a kid, and you sit down for the first time, and you're like, well, maybe I know a little bit of this stuff. Like, I know that the brake is on the left and the gas is on the right, and then there's this little shifter thing maybe. But you maybe very quickly start to learn what the pieces are as they're explained to you, but you don't really know what to do with them. And then you start to work them together, and you're consciously competent. You're starting to get skills to go forward and back up and do all these things. But then what happens is, like, conscious competence, one thing that I would say here is, like, this is like you turn off the radio to turn, or you, like, have to actively think, like, which way to turn your turn signal to turn left or right. You have to think to... I got to move my foot over and move the clutch down and then brake or engine braking, whatever. Most people don't engine brake in regular cars, but whatever, you're consciously competent. But then when you're unconsciously competent in driving, you are, I don't smoke, but let's say you're smoking, you're drinking a soda, you got the window down, your radio's blasting, and you can just take a corner at 25 or something, right? Maybe that's a little fast. But the point is, you're unconsciously competent of all these things. You're not even thinking about the individual steps. Most people would think that's where I want to chill. That's where I want to be. I want to be a master like this. But I would caution you in this model that I think as an engineer, you want to stay up here. You want to always be learning. You always want to be applying things and learning things. And you don't want to be unconsciously competent of just going through the motions and knowing how to do things. Because what happens here, and I've seen this in my career a lot, guys will be so good at what they do that the industry moves. The industry changes and they're still maintaining their thing. But then it's kind of like they come up 10 years later, they get laid off or they get told that their program's decommissioning and they have to start all freaking over back here about shit that they've never even heard of. Like if you haven't been in Kubernetes for the last 10 years, but I remember when Kubernetes first popped up. I remember the first time I ever heard Docker. I was sitting over at Keras Life Sciences, probably 2014. And I remember the first time my boss was like, hey, we need to look into this Docker stuff. And I was like, oh, that is interesting. I never even heard of this. And then Kubernetes started getting real popular and all this other stuff. And then there's that. All right, so this is the model here. Hold on, most people learning all the commands. Yeah, schizophrenic web developer, let me tell you this. You will not hear me complain more down in the Discord. We got a complaints channel for Discord, and you can go back up and look at all the times that I've complained on LinkedIn about LinkedIn. Like, I tell people, like, some of you that play on LinkedIn, and like, I'm never gonna like bash anybody that's connected to me, but like, they'll like or share something from somebody that's like, here's the 20 Linux commands you need to know to be a DevOps SRE, whatever. I go to that liked page of my friend, whoever my colleague is or whoever. I go to that person that posts that and I block them forever. And I tell you guys, some of you are probably getting me fucking to just block all this stupid shit because, again, yeah, just knowing commands is like the stupidest way. You'll never learn anything. I've been learning Python for years, but I don't sit down and ever do anything with it, so I'm never going to learn it. I'm proficient. Like, I can write Python if I need to, but like I'm not a coder for it. But I can do like tasks with it. But my point in saying that is like I am not that just knowing things about it. Like, oh, I figured out how to open a file or something. That's like, okay, fucking do it in a project, right? So anyways, yeah, LinkedIn, yeah, Robin, I'll tell you what, man, there's so many people that have gotten people just kicked off my page because it's like, here's the 100 command, or my oh god, it's my third day of 100 days of code. Follow me for my journey. And it's like, dude, why don't you just tell us when you're done? Let us know when you're done. Like, could you imagine if I just told you all the times I was studying for certs and I'm like 15 of 100 days getting ready for my cert? You'd be like, tell me when you're done, Scott. What the hell is this? Anyways, don't come down to unconscious competence. This sounds wonderful. You're just like Neo going like this and just blocking the agent, and he's not even looking at him at the end of the first Matrix movie. He's just sitting there blocking and doing all this stuff with one arm, and he's like disinterested because he can just do it. That is not where you want to be as an engineer because, again, the industry is going to change out from under you, right? Although I will tell you, like, base Linux hasn't changed since the early 90s. I mean, yeah, components and pieces have, but like we're still doing the same basic stuff. And the Unix guys I know have been doing it even longer in Unix shells, and things haven't fundamentally changed in my mind. Angelo said, greetings, I came. The slides will be available. They're up in Discord. Yeah, all these slides I have are up in Discord. I tell you guys, I'm very open kimono about my stuff. Everything that I write and do is open for you guys to use. There's also some other stuff on like getting into the industry and that kind of stuff. Yeah, and all of our old talks are up there, right? Some of you guys have been around a long time. Stay tuned. Yeah, I'm on day 17,458 of my, all my certs. Yeah, Core Utils hasn't changed much. Although somebody had we installed on one of my boxes the other day, like the Rust Core Utils. We were playing with that. I don't know, it seemed fine. I'm not down benchmarking those kind of things, but we could do that as a test someday if we wanted. We could apply the normal benchmarking things to a system that we've gutted and changed out and stuff like that. That sounds interesting. But yeah, Core Utils hasn't changed much. All right, so here's another one. I really like this one because you might say, okay, Scott, that other slide was very theoretical. Can you give me something practical? Because at the end of the day, right, like you're looking at me and you're like, oh, this is some asshole at the internet talking at me like he's better than me. You better than me? No, right? My point in saying all that is maybe the practicality here is this. you need to explore something. Like, so you tell me, hey, Scott, I want to learn Kubernetes. I know that Kubernetes is called K8 sometimes, and that's all I know. Right? That's all you know about it. And I say, okay, maybe you want to explore a little bit and maybe go read a little bit. I can give you some links. I give you some places to go putz around on the internet about it a little bit. But then when you're done, you feel a little comfortable. Maybe you start practicing it, and it doesn't have to be in this order, because I tell you guys all the time, if you were to say, hey, Scott, like, I want to go to the gym with a couple of my buddies, and I want to get big, and all my buddies are getting big and the girls are noticing them or whatever, so I want to go to the gym. I can tell you right now, your friends are not going to sit you down in the locker room for 6 hours and tell you all about the gym. They're just going to tell you to, hey, follow us around and do stuff. So practicing is very important, right? Getting hands-on, new concepts. We could go jump into Killer Coda right now, and we could start talking about role-based access control in Kubernetes. And while there's a lot to go explore and read about that, most of you, I think, would probably remember a lot of that if you were typing in the commands and actually you're listing out the roles that are there. You're applying them to either a namespace or the entire cluster, and you're understanding these different pieces. And then you start to contrast the different parts, and you go, oh, that's how that one works, and that's how that works. And then I apply some permissions to the role, and then, oh, boom, now I can give some user access to my cluster to only do certain things. They can only deploy to this namespace and do these things. Oh, look at that. That's super simple, right? Like now I know what namespaces are, right? They're these little kind of like little partitions, and then I know how people can interact with those namespaces, and I can give all these permissions and stuff. So that's like practicing. Practicing is, like I tell you guys, like sometimes in some of our environments, we just come here and I tell you, hey, go jump in, the same server as me, the same type of server, right? And we're just going to do these commands together. So maybe I, cat root hosts, not going to be there. All right, it's not there. So then we touch root hosts, right? Boom, it's there. Now we can cat it, there's nothing in it. Okay, well, how do I put something in a file? Well, I can directly write things into a file with a redirect. I can VI a file and do some interactive terminal type stuff, or I copy a file from somewhere else. I can go steal it from the internet with an API call. I can do all kinds of ways of getting data into that little file, right? That's cool, right? So maybe we play with that a little bit. Maybe that's like an hour of like instruction or something. We just kind of go and mess around with this kind of stuff, right? Yeah. I don't call it K8s very often. But we were behind. Me and the wife were behind somebody yesterday, or was it 2 days ago? It doesn't matter when it was. And she had K8 space 8888. That was her license plate. I'm doxing her right now. You can go search her. Whoever this person was, guy or girl, had Kate, so K8, Kate 8888. And I asked the wife, I was like, is she a glutton? Does she always eat, as they say? Like, oh, when you diss somebody and they're like, oh, he ate. That's fucking stupidest terminology I've ever heard, but that's how people talk nowadays. And anyway, so I saw this license plate, and I'm probably never for the rest of my life going to forget it, because it was K8 space 8888. So 4 8s after. I don't know. Anyways, but I don't know where I was going with that. But practice, right? You explore a thing, and these could be, I honestly think these are spinning. In fact, maybe all of this is spinning, because then we apply it directly to real world tasks. You say, hey, Scott, I know how to build a Linux server, and I go like this, show me, right? Like again, back to the Matrix, show me. Like, Morpheus doesn't want him to tell him about how he knows karate or kung fu, he said, right? I know kung fu. Fucking do it. We have a thing about, in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, we talk about, you could go buy any belt color you want on Amazon right now. $4, $6, you get a belt. But you gotta defend that shit when you go into gym. You walk in the gym with a black belt, it's about to be a bad time if you don't know how to wrestle, right? So anyways, my point in saying, and I say wrestling because generically that's how I tell it to other people, so they don't think I'm doing karate. But anyway, so explore, practice, apply. And this is kind of, some of you that have followed along with our courses, this is the way that I build our courses. We have 2 courses completely built, which is the systems administration. That's all up online. And then what's the other one? Security engineering. That one's done. And then we're in the automation course right now. We're in week 4 this week. Well, we're in week 3 right now, but 4 will be coming up. And we're building that as we go, right? And all this kind of stuff. Uh, fish, right. Well, it does. You know what? Speaking of that, the little penguin logo there. The person that I asked to do that, I did it on Fiverr. I need to just find somebody. I don't know if any of you guys know anybody that does like little GIF art or any of that kind of stuff. I need somebody that'll do art for me. I'll pay them. But I really wanted that penguin sitting down, and I even showed the guy. I said, or whoever it was, guy or girl, whatever. I don't even remember anymore. But I showed them like a panda sitting there, like with its arms up like this, almost like waiting to give you a hug. That's what I wanted that little penguin looking like. And then he turned it into like karate. So yeah, well, that's how Twitch gets to see us. Walker Texas Ranger style. That's funny. Actually, Walker had early Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on his show, so he actually had the Machado brothers on his show, mid '90s. So there's a old. If you ever see the guys that he trains in the gym with and does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with, he Walker Texas Ranger. Most people don't know Chuck Norris is the reason a lot of us really know what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is, because he brought those guys up here to train with his groups. He brought those guys all up from Brazil to train with his big organizations and stuff. So explore, practice, apply. Explore, practice, apply. This is the way that things kind of spin. And this is, again, so we were talking about competency here, moving from here to here, but this was very high level. This was, there wasn't really anything to bite in on here, right? This is how you bite in. You read about a thing that's interesting. As you practice and explore it, then you find places to apply it to real world projects and that kind of stuff. So if we were doing this, if we were just right here, home lab, and I went to like Killer Coda, I don't know what I want to learn. Let's say I want to learn, some guy named Scott will teach me Ansible. I don't know this guy, but we can also go here if we want, and we can change it to dark mode because some of you don't like the light, right? Some of you like, it burns us. And here are, I think, 30, almost 30, a whole bunch of ways to use Ansible. And then we would be exploring as we go to study the different things, but then we would be applying or practicing it as we work on it. So let's say playbook to push facts to all servers. I don't even know what facts are, but I'm going to figure them out, right? So then we come over here and we start to, maybe I should have done all the other labs first, but it says your team has decided to stamp variables to your server so that they know information about themselves relative to their job functions. Verify your root hosts and then some other information in the system. So I'll go here and maybe I'll cat root, and then what do I have in there? Some custom fact push YAML. Okay, here's some file that's some YAML, and it's going to do something, and then maybe it's going to push. What's it going to push? Root prod patching fact. It's going to push this, or it's going to push this dev patching fact over to the server based on the tags of the server in the inventory. Probably sounds pretty complex. Not complex. Just something that you have to spend some time with. You have to maybe play with it and see it happen, and then you go read some of the things that you did, and then you go, oh, okay, hold on, wait. So that thing slid those files over there based on that name and slid that file over there. And then when I get later in the lab and I go read those files back, all Ansible is doing is ingesting that. And what is that? Oh, yeah. Oh, that looks like, I don't know the format, but I could probably grab that and throw it in ChatGPT and it would tell me that's JSON, right? Because this is definitely a JSON formatted file right here. If you didn't know that, now, and then you would go, well, what the hell is this JSON or JSON or JSON, whatever this guy keeps saying this thing wrong. It's JSON, right? JSON? JSON, people call it both. It's a key value pair, semi-structured language that we use for passing data between APIs and systems and all this stuff. And this is the way that we're going to push it onto servers. And then Ansible will slurp it back up and read it as variables out of the server. Here's the key, and here's the value. Or you can think of it as the variable name and the value of what's in the box. Whatever. There's a bunch of ways that you can think of this, right? Yeah, some interesting dude for sure. So I didn't pull that up to really show you that or get into that. This is how we study. This is how we build these skills if we need to. If you say, Scott, I've got, an extra 30 minutes every day and I want to put them the most effective place I can, I would tell you, be at a terminal, at a command line doing something, right? If you tell me, hey, Scott, I want to be a Linux admin and I want to get into Linux engineering, this is where I would tell you to start 100% of the time. This is absolutely 100%. Get in the command line, do some stuff, explore, maybe go study it a little bit, and then practice the things that you can, and then try to apply them to real world problems. And if you say, well, Scott, I need help with the applying part, that's what we do. That's what our Discord is. Like, there's all kinds of stuff in there for going and applying projects, right? Or you just ask, hey, how do I do this thing, right? And then I'll point you to stuff that I've written, but other people will be like, oh, hey, I do this and I do that, and next thing you know, you got a bunch of people working on stuff. Let me see. What did you say? 79. Are remote jobs for Linux systems admin or C++ development still normal? I am a vibration and engine analyst, so purely physical. Well, yeah, I have worked exclusively remote for the last 5 years, but I could have worked remote my whole career. That being said, my title starting out in engineering was a hardware engineer, so I worked in data centers. In data center work, I do have to physically be there. And even to this day, I still go in the data center sometimes when I'm needed. But for the most part, you do have, Linux sysadmins for sure can be remote. In fact, everybody that works in our Discord and it can hop down into my home lab. I have a way to get into our ProLug labs, and then they can access the different environments and do different things that they need to just practice inside of a kind of safe system to break. And in fact, I encourage people to break them, reboot them, bring them back up to a clean node every time. So, Q, you probably have. I forget. Do you have Q? Do you have a security thing? I know some guys in the server have security clearances, but I always forget who. There are sometimes security requirements where you can't be remote. I use a common access card or a CAC card from the government, U.S. government. I also have a CAC card from the military when I was in long ago. I got one of the earliest ones in 2003, right? But that being said, you can, properly form VPN tunnels and bastion nodes and this kind of stuff, and still be able to get a fair amount of good, secure communication into some types of systems. But a lot of times with SCIFs, you can't get in there all the way. You have to be physically at them for all kinds of other reasons. So, Yep. So learning how you learn, very important. Here's your competency acquisition path, and these are the things that I would tell you to do and learn how to do and that kind of stuff. So now, did I copy this? Oh, well, so I made a mistake here. I was copying something for a different project, and apparently I copied it into here. Let's say that this is all. Hold on. I don't know why I did that. I must have been. I was copying something earlier today, and this is learning how you learn. So apparently I did that all twice. Okay, get that out of there. Okay. I accidentally copied and pasted that on the same one. So, all right, we're back. Learn how you learn. Now, the next one, to any clear chatters on hiring. Nice. Yeah. If anybody's got, I still have a TS, but it's not active. I'd have to go reactivate it. Plus, I love what I do so much, guys. Like, I couldn't see myself ever moving. Let's talk about certification. Hold on. What's this? Atticus now said, hi, Scott. What are your thoughts on system admin, system engineering roles in the industry going forward? Are firms still hiring these roles like they used to where you are? Yeah, actually, we have 2 open roles right now. Well, so it's weird because I actually told some people about this in the Discord. The open roles for my team are with GDIT, General Dynamics IT. So, my company and me are not the ones hiring for the other people on our team. It's because of the sub. So when you, it's a long story, but when you go in for a federal contract, a lot of times there'll be a primary and there'll be a secondary or a sub. So primary and sub typically. And the primary on this project won, and we were the sub. So we have a certain amount of seats kind of on there, and those are all full. But they lost a couple of guys. One guy passed away, and then one guy left. So they're hiring, but I would still have pull. If somebody said, hey, I want to throw my hat in the ring for high performance compute, but they're really looking for guys that are 10, 15 years plus in the industry, which is, it makes it hard. And specifically in high performance compute, because it's an active project, right? An active big government project. That being said, I think that people are still hiring. Atticus now, every now and then we'll go on DICE. I could pull it up. I have, we'll go. Where's this at? We'll go to, I got it over here. Put this over here. Sometimes I'll go find like real jobs, and I'm pretty sure they're real jobs. So real Linux admin and engineering jobs, and we've gone through these before. Dice is 1995. Dice is still active, surprisingly. It's where the hell did my notepad just? Oh, there's notepad. I was like, where'd my notepad plus? I love notepad plus plus, guys. I'm a simple guy. You give me a little thing like this that I can just put all my notes in. This is my second stage of notes. I have 3 stages of notes. I've explained them to you guys before. But this was a real Linux admin thing, and then here were all the numbers, the actual things they wanted. And then these were all my like responses. Like these are the things that I thought that you should go study if you were trying to get. In this case, this was a specific Linux sysadmin job, and they wanted people to be a member of enterprise IT infrastructure, and they wanted you to be able to diagnose and resolve issues related to RHEL device management during standard business hours. So, what PCI devices are connected, what modules are loaded of some type. Typically, things don't break unless they're like, things that break while the system's live tend to be hardware. If hardware goes down or has a component failure. But if it booted and it was working and it was good on a system, a lot of times you're going to see messages and errors about it. But like ETH tool to see that a network interface is connected. If you're on a virtual machine and you want to make sure that there's actually a VNIC attached according to the system, IP address, like all these commands, right? And I don't want to bog people down with commands because understanding how to troubleshoot is what they want. But they may ask you some specific commands, so you might need to know them, right? Yeah, I think there's all kinds of stuff out there. But in the idea of certifications, I do think that certifications are good as a differentiator. If you are going for a job that wants Net Plus and Security Plus, and you don't have a Net Plus or Security Plus, but 3 other people do, there's a very good chance that you're not going to be the one that they pick. Now, you might knock their socks off, and you might get to be the one that they picked. But if there's a company that has a hard requirement, so sometimes you're doing government projects, and you have to have a Security Plus to be able to be this minimum certified administrator. And then actually going forward on this project I'm on, everybody needs to have a Security Plus, except me. I don't have to have it because I have a CISSP. But CISSP trumps that. There's like a 1-level certification, and then there's a higher one. It's like AIT or IAT 1 and 2, something like that. You can look them up. They're the 8670 standards, but I think they just got 8140 now. I think they just got rewritten. I thought they used to be 8160, but 8140 is probably right. And then I thought they just got supplanted a few months ago by a new one. So these sort of
answer that for money.
Who did ask? Are there some organizations transparent on what sorts they would like their applicants? Robodom, yeah, people will put it in there if you have to have that. Absolutely. People will absolutely have that. If you guys don't know, if anybody does !ask, it does that to the screen. 8140, 8570 was a handful of specific ones. Okay. I thought all those just got redone, Q. So I think Red Hat certs are great. This was a very generic one. This is also mostly examples. I think Red Hat certs are great, especially if you want to do just RHEL administration. In fact, admin, I'd say RHEL, in my experience, RHEL is probably, and that's RHEL, that's probably 95% of systems is some type of Red Hat based. Even on all these systems I've been building for the government that are all Rocky, that's still Red Hat under the hood. And then the other systems are, similar. So I think Red Hat's a great cert set. But ISC squared, great for getting your security chops in a little bit. CompTIA, I think, is a really good generic one. Linux Foundation, they're doing CKA, CKAD. Those are great certs for people that want to get into that type of industry. Cloud certs. But at the end of the day, the certs that I'm talking about here, they're not going to make you any smarter. They're just going to show you the body of knowledge around a thing. So like Q said something about his RHCSA, right? If I took somebody who had been doing Linux for 5 years and said, okay, I'm just going to hire this guy because he's been doing Linux for 5 years, that's great. Or if I hired Q, who's only been doing Linux for, let's say, 1 year, but he's got his RHCSA, if I ask him a very specific way to add LVM disks, he's probably going to do it the Red Hat way. Whereas this other person who's just been kind of out in the wild, guys, I learned all my stuff in the wild. I have no problem with telling people learning stuff in the wild is great. But if you want it to look like Red Hat way of doing it, you probably should hire somebody that has a cert for it, is my point. So all of these things are really just, I want people to have body of knowledge. I want people to talk about things the same way. I don't want there to be conflicts in our organization because people are talking about different tools, the same tools, different ways. That's a problem. So I'm a big fan of certifications for that. And again, I didn't exclude Red Hat for any terrible reason or anything. I wasn't trying to snub them in any way. So these are all expensive, though. I'll tell you, if you're not in the industry, some of these get pretty pricey. So what if you were like, hey, Scott, I have a blank page, but I've been doing Linux for a few months, and I think I'm pretty okay at Linux, and maybe you're playing on Killer Coda, and you're like, I think I got some chops. Can I at least put some stuff on my resume that will show people that I want to do tech? And I say, yeah. Here's all the free certs that I know about. I probably should update this list. I think we've got some more that are out there now. But if you tell me that I want to get into like tech and Scott, I got nothing on my resume. I've worked at Subway for 4 years. I'm really good at making sandwiches, but I want to get into something else. Guys, there's nothing wrong with making sandwiches, right? There's nothing wrong with working construction. I worked construction my whole young life. And then I went in the infantry, which was way stupider and way harder than that. But the point is, these are things that I think are great. So general engineering, you told me, hey, Scott, maybe you're doing admin work, but you want to be an engineer. Here's the ways that I would go study. If I wasn't going to pay for school, right? You're not going to pay for college. You're already in the industry. You just want to get better, this is excelling in the engineering field for anybody. That's what this talk is called. Six Sigma is a great methodology to learn. It's free to learn it. These guys will teach you it for free. It is about process improvement. Everything we do as engineers is a cycle. It's an engineering, right? Engine cycle. So engineers understand how things cycle. So Six Sigma and Lean Six Sigma are about improving the cycle. There's some basic statistics. You learn it in a few minutes. Now, some of the advanced ones have more advanced statistics, but the basics you can do for white belt pretty easily. You'll learn how to take inputs, processes, and outputs, and then put suppliers and customers on them. So the SIPOC diagrams, SIPOC, and those. And when you look at them, you go, wait a minute. I thought computer science was input, process, output. It is, because computer science is engineering. All these things I said, it's like, oh, they're all connected, man. They are. All right. API lifecycle. Everything you're going to touch in your career at some point, you're going to have to learn APIs. You're going to have to learn how things talk to each other. So just go learn some life cycle. We put together a study guide with it that's free in our Discord. You can go find that. Gremlin Chaos Engineering. They still have this free. Somebody took this a few months ago. Actually, one of our guys took this. So I know this is still free, but Gremlin has this cool little Chaos Engineering cert you can go get. Put on your thing and try it for some SRE roles. Hey, I know some Linux. I know some Kubernetes. Oh, and hey, I understand Chaos Engineering. Chaos Engineering at the end of the day is just the scientific method applied to, well, what if I turned this off? What if I turned that off? And how you can do that effectively in a company without damaging anything. Hugh, what did you say? Some people at Summit who called themselves Purple Hatters because they also technically work at both IBM and Red Hat. That's funny. There was a Purple Hats conference for a few years which dealt with purple teaming. So if you guys know what red teaming is and what blue teaming is, purple teaming was trying to figure out a way to, let's say, facilitate the teams, because red teamers and blue teamers fight all the time. Because red team will find something and tell blue team to fix it, and blue team will kind of, be taken a little aback because they're being talked to like that. They're like, watch your mouth, help me with the sale. I know that's like a 20-year-old movie now. I think, how old is the 40-year-old virgin? That movie's like got to be getting on 20 years old now. But when they're talking trash and he's like, first of all, you're throwing a lot of big words at me and I don't know what they mean, so I'm going to take them as disrespect. Watch your mouth and help me with the sale. Somebody should clip that. But anyways, that's a thing that me and the wife always say to each other. You're throwing a lot of big words at me that I don't understand. But anyway, so is it 2005 Robodog? Oh my God. Oh gosh. Anyway, so Gremlin Chaos Engineering, great tool, and to understand, how systems, we expect all systems to fail over time, right? Engineers believe in entropy and the breakdown of things. Engineers believe in that. Engineers don't believe that things keep making themselves better. Things break down over time for engineers. That's what we observe. That's what our careers are based on. If things made themselves better over time in our systems, they wouldn't need us. We have to maintain these systems, right? Networking, IPv6. I actually showed this one to the students earlier. My college students got a similar, it's a different presentation of this, but it's similar. And here's Hurricane Electric, and these are the things they'll teach you about IPv6 right here. And one of our guys, Inspector, he's always talking about this. I should probably go take this one of these days. But they have the training and the certification for this is free. So if you tell me, hey Scott, I wanna go be a Linux admin for a telco company. I want to work for a telco company. And I say, okay. Well, telco and like ISPs, right? Internet service providers, they are going to have IPv6 in their environments. Most of us dual stack most of you are probably running a dual stack IPv6 without even knowing it or without even thinking about it. In fact, I'd be willing to bet. Yeah, this has IPv6 on it. Yep, there it is right there. And loopback is IPv6 loopback. So yeah, so most of you are probably running that on any system past like Rel 8 just by turning the system on, right? Yeah, Q, well, it depends, right? It depends on when it was. Was it like a summer release or was it, yeah, it could be 21 years now, depending on, right? Because, anyways, these are all the things that they want to teach you. And one of my favorite things about stuff like this in a syllabus, right? Something like this is like, you don't just have to put down, oh, I got an IPv6 certification from HE Hurricane Electric. Nobody knows what Hurricane Electric is. I mean, there's probably some people out there, but like no manager, no HR company. But you put down in there that you understand IPv6 connectivity and you can ping IPv6 addresses for troubleshooting in the network, and you know how to do, and you can do like a few tasks. Again, I'm talking about a guy with a blank page and he's never done any networking, never done anything. Shit, you can at least have a certification on your, and I tell you guys all the time, positive differentiators for me are one of the most important things you can have when you're trying to get a job. Positive differentiator is the thing that when they cut the next group of people, you're just passed over that line. You're just over that line, still surviving, right? Anybody here ever watch, what was that show on Netflix with they were killing everybody until there's only one left? I don't remember what it's called. It's some kind of, why can't I remember that? Squid Games. That was exactly it. Yeah, Squid Games. And then I liked the other version of it. I only saw the one season of it, but the one what was it? Alice in Borderland? Was that Alice in Borderland? Yeah, I thought that was a more fun version of it. X-Shunya, yeah, IPv6 has been coming out since. So when I was in college, from like 2004 2006 in my undergrad, I remember hearing IPv6 will be here tomorrow. IPv6 is coming. It's coming. Here we are, like literally 21 years later. Don't. IPv6 is here, guys. It's just your internal foundational stuff is still all IPv4, so you still need to know that. 2006 is the year of IPv6 in the Linux desktop. Yeah, we're gonna see it all rise, right? So those are some free certs. Here's some certs where the certification training is free, but the certification itself is not free. So wait, hold on real quick. This was certifications where it's probably going to cost you. This is an expensive. All these are expensive certs. Well, this is very expensive, and then these are like middle of the road. These are free to train and free to go take the test. In fact, if you guys wanted to go do like Six Sigma, most of you could probably download that, study it for a few hours. Maybe I'd give it like 12 to 16 hours, and then go take that test, right? Pass and get a little white belt cert. Better than nothing. These ones, all of the training that I'm going to show you here is free, but the certifications are not free. So all the hands-on labs, which there's literally hundreds, probably over 1,000 now on Killer Coda, are free to go do. So if you said, hey Scott, can you show me everything you know about Linux and Ansible? And I say, well, I could probably show you most of it, which is all up in the Killer Coda labs. So there's a bunch of labs. I think I'm up to I'm maybe up around 80 labs in there now around different topics. And then all the other Six Sigma stuff is not free. Only the first one's free. But you can train all the levels. You can go, all that knowledge, the whole body of knowledge is out there free. Terraform and Vault. Those certs cost $75. They're good for 3 years. I held both the Terraform and Vault, but they lapsed last year sometime. I didn't ever redo them. They're $75, but all the training is free. They'll teach you everything about that stuff, give you hands-on for free. Going to take the cert is $75. So that's that. You want to learn data science? Kaggle will teach you all that stuff. They'll even drop you in a Jupyter notebook for free. They'll give you, they actually have a limited number of GPUs that I've seen that you can use with like just a Google. When I say free, you still have to like Google Federated Authenticate, but it's free. It doesn't cost, like there's no bill that ever comes to you. General Web, Linux, if you want to go read, the Linux documentation project is still where I go reference if I need to do a very specific thing in Bash, right? Like if there's a file test operator that I don't understand, it'll tell me there. Do you say it's a 2 GPU cluster? Hey, 2 GPUs is better than 0 GPUs, right? And 20 hours, is that per month, Xshunya? That's pretty good. I don't think Red Hat certs are a requirement. I've done my whole career without a Red Hat cert. I think it's good to have. Like I think it's a good body of knowledge to know, but you have it. But I'll tell you, I don't think you're gonna find anywhere that's gonna train you on Red Hat for free. So that's one of the things. Yeah, Q. We could have tens of millions of addresses internally, so then it became less important to get on IPv6 because everybody could have big internal spaces for sure. Now, web security, Portswigger is Burp Suite. So Burp Suite is absolutely the standard for API testing and web page testing of different types. Portswigger, they will train you. They have an academy. It's called the Portswigger Academy. You can go there. You can learn everything about Burp. The test is like $300 or $400 though. But could you learn everything about it and at least feel confident to talk about it? Sure. But then, so one of the things I'm trying to emphasize is if you're starting out in the industry and you don't have a lot of money yet, these are free. These ones are not free, and these ones are not free to take the test, but you could study it. If you saw a job that said, hey, I want you to know HashiCorp Vault, you can go study all 9 of the Vault requirements, all the 9 of the objectives, and then all the subcomponents, and you can at least go in there and give it a shot. That's better than not studying it, right? So, Oracle free tier. Oh, nice. I didn't know that. Q, we were just talking about that up in Discord. People were saying how there's I guess Oracle has free cert testing all the way until the end of the month or something. That's what somebody was saying. So, all right, let's get past the cert stuff because that's only so important. Let's say build yourself a home lab. Get a lab. And I've modified this. You can do a lot of free engineering out in AWS and Azure. You can do a whole lot of free engineering out there. A whole lot of learning and testing for free. I got my Google Cloud. I got my AWS certified practitioner. So whatever, certified cloud practitioner, and my solutions architect associate. I got those like 6 days apart when I got them. And then I got my security focus ones. Those were the first 3 that I got. I got them for about 47 cents worth of AWS charges over 3 months. It cost me like nothing. But now my work had free A Cloud Guru, which became Pluralsight back then. But that being said, I'm giving full disclosure, we did have paid for stuff. But my actual stuff that I did was almost nothing. So hey, Slyborg, how's it going? We are going through a presentation that I have on excelling in the engineering field after college. Or, as I say here, I'll show you guys. This one is excelling in the engineering field after college, or if you weren't going to go to college, for anybody. Because I originally did this for college students of mine, and then I wanted, to go this way. But then we talked about how you get into stuff, how you learn and how certifications work, and we just got to the home lab section. So this is all you guys missed, a little bit about how you learn, and then certifications and free certs that are out there and that kind of stuff. And then we were getting into like building a home lab. Cloud has a lot of free stuff, but the stuff that I have has cost me, okay, so I did just buy another component the other day that's actually flying out here right now, and I will have it in like a week. And when I add that to the home lab, my home lab will cost about $2,000 total. So this is about $1,500 more. But My home lab, I virtualize everything. I use XCP-ng. These are all of my 4 physical boxes right here. They're okay. I think they're all 128 gigs of RAM and various speeds of CPUs, and then one of them is only 32 gigs of RAM. Well, the system that I just bought is 512 gigs of RAM, so it's a much bigger system that's going to be able to virtualize a lot more. And I don't think I'm going to use XCP-ng for him. I think I'm going to finally move over to Proxmox and do that, because everybody's always telling me to use Proxmox. So I'm like, all right, we'll use Proxmox on the next version of the lab. But I will slowly move all of these components over, because these components are on the box with only 32 gigs. This box uses the most storage. He's got a little over a terabyte and some change, maybe 1.3 terabytes or so of data on him. So when I move him, I'm probably just going to build the new one in place and then move all the data over there. I always call that the free cell problem. How long does it take you to move data? Like, if any of you ever played free cell, you've got only 4 free cells, and how much can you move of data? Well, the box I'm bringing in has 4.6 terabytes of storage, so 1.3 are basically already spoken for with this, and then I'm going to build all the other stuff around it. But most of the systems I use in the lab, I use an architecture, I use a cluster manager called Werewolf. So if anybody wants to see how Werewolf works, it kind of looks like this. I have a whole talk on Werewolf, and there's a bunch of nodes that are defined. If you want to see how any one node is defined, let's go like auto 1. And in here, here's the node definition, and then the node has an image and some other things, and this is all pushed into that cluster. It's pushed into that node as the node boots. So the node boots up. Let's go to like auto, where was I at? Auto, let's do auto 5. Here's auto 5. And I'll go over here to like auto 5, and we'll just kick this poor guy over, right? Reboot, boom. And when he boots and comes back up, he's going to pull all of this information. He's going to do what's called an iPXE boot. He's going to pull up an image. He's going to pull that image from Werewolf. He is going to then start a basic kernel. He's going to do a DraCut 2-stage boot. He's going to pull a different kernel and his init RAM-FS, and then he's going to boot and start his stuff. CyberNoidPie said, what field do you do, Hetanis? I guess you would call me a high-performance compute engineer, or I'm a principal high-performance compute engineer. I do cybersecurity. I do literally everything. I do stuff for the government. I focus on cybersecurity as far as hardening Linux systems. But at the end of the day, all I do all day is Linux. So, it's like I do Linux like most people do anything else. Drakkar Machina said XCP-ng compared to Proxmox. XCP-ng is going out, so don't think anything of it. I just have had it for a long time. It is when Xen got forked and bought by Oracle, XCP-ng was forked off of it. So Xen got bought by Oracle maybe 5 years ago, and XCP-ng is still in. So here's it's booting to its 2-stage DraCut. You're going to see it pull down another kernel right here, and then it's init RAM-FS. So all that being said, XCP-ng is probably not the way most people want to go. I've just been using it out of stubbornness. I'm going to move over to Proxmox, and then I'm going to use all my Ansible playbooks through Proxmox instead of. So I do deploy into XCP-ng. Where are we at? Where's my box at? Here. But it's not really. Let's go with target. So this was when I was deploying all my target environments. So here's all my target nodes. You can see them, in one of those. I'm not going to change it right now. And then this is how it actually deployed via Ansible. It was, the Ansible playbook called Xen Server Guest. And then this gets a whole bunch of variables out of a vault. And then it reads in that environment file and it builds the nodes over here that then become part of the Werewolf cluster. So a lot of automation and stuff going on. Whoops. Oh, shit. I didn't mean to do that. He's booting up. You're going to see him go through a bunch of his processes. I have a talk. I just recorded a talk the other day for the Werewolf user group. So if anybody needs to see me doing Werewolf, it's over on YouTube. So hopefully I'm not missing any chat here. But okay, so anyways, there's that. So Werewolf's going to boot this box up. There's some errors because I just haven't gone back and cleaned some of that stuff up. And then it's going to boot, and then I should be able to SSH into Auto 5. Oops. Auto 5. And there he is. He's been up for 1 minute. Kernel. And often when I explain to people how Werewolf works, one of their first questions is, wait, so the box is running some kind of cluster, some kind of container management, and then that starts to... No. When we interact on the Werewolf side, we download container images and we build them into fully functioning Linux boxes internally. We apply overlays to them and all this stuff. When a node checks in, like Auto5 just did, and builds itself through iPXE, he comes up. He's like Pinocchio. He's a real boy. He's not a little toy running containers and stuff. He's a real server that has started up with a kernel and has a switch root and his own root FS on the box. He is this server is, for all intents and purposes, no different than if I had started any other bare metal. Well, in this case, he's a VM, but no different than any other VM server that was a real stateful node. But he's stateless because he's always going to pull that clean. It's like a little trap door. When you do whatever you do to it, and then the trap door falls, everybody falls off, comes up clean every time. That's how stateless nodes work, and they're great for high performance compute. I talk about all that in that other talk, though. But anyways, that's kind of how that works. So anyways, we were over here. Build yourself a home lab. I use, in the home lab here, I use a lot of tooling. Like obviously we have Grafana and we do all this monitoring and stuff of the lab. But then if we go to Excalidraw, here's my Excalidraw. And if I was to show you guys here, so this is kind of like what my environment looks like as far as, you know, when you jump in. If anybody jumps in from our Discord, they come in off of Prolog at prolog.asuscom.com. They hit our external server. They get pushed through to Jump02. Jump02 is a Bastion node. Bastion nodes are nodes that handle connections and things like that. I talked about it. I show you guys how to build them in the security engineering course, which is free. Everything we do is free up on Discord. And then that sends you back to either a jailed user connection to Rocky or Auto or Hammer. There's a bunch of different ones like that. I can show you those connections if you want. This is how it works underneath the hood, though, is right here. Here's the Bastion process. You come in from Prolog at prolog.asuscom.com. You use a key. You can push your keys up into Discord, and I'll just pull them in and put them down there. You get dropped into a CH root environment that tells you pick admin, security, or automation labs, and then it drops you back into whatever servers are available that nobody's using. If there's no servers available, it tells you, and we haven't had that come up yet. And if you can't get in, you know, you keep banging on it, you get failed to band out for a while. I used to have it be forever, but I just made it for a while now, because whatever. And this is all jailed up in SSH and CH root jails, right? Or chroot, however you want to do it. I always say CH root because it comes up better here anyways. But some people like to say chroot, and it doesn't really matter. All right, so anyways, build yourself a home lab. Then what do you do with the home lab? Well, there's two things. You either do personal projects, things that are interesting to you. And in my case, I like digital signals. I don't have to run Prolog, but I do, right? We have this Prolog where professional Linux users or people that want to become professionals can hop in the labs and do all kinds of labs that we have, right? There's all kinds of free stuff out there for you guys to do. But that's like my personal stuff. Personal, like build Grafana dashboards, all that kind of stuff. And then you can also do professional projects which directly relate to your job. So I do Ansible all day. Like I write all kinds of stuff. So I'm a fan of it. I've been using it since 2013 when it was released. I'm not trying to say that to sound cool or anything. I've just been using Ansible forever. It's what got me off of Perl. I originally used to do everything in Bash and Perl. And where I'm going with that then is like Ansible's a great tool. We've got an automation course going right now to show people how to use it and other tools. I monitor everything at home. I maintain a bunch of servers at work. Actually, this is probably a little smaller now because this was when I was at AAA. And at NOAA, I'm actually probably maintaining close to like 6K servers. It's like it's 26 and 26, and then there's some extra. So it's 2600, and then some extra. But I built out all these different ways of looking at the system. And if you guys were like, well, hey, what's your monitoring look like? Well, monitoring looks like this in our lab. Hold on. Just open monitoring. Monitoring tends to look like this in the home lab. Oops. So if you didn't know, you guys can use Excalidraw for free right in VS Code. Some people like VS Code, some people don't. This is what my home lab looks like here for like all my monitoring architecture, right? So here's the storage tier, the presentation tier, and the ingest tier of how everything fits together. So if somebody was like, hey, you know, give me the rundown, show me how to build this in an hour, I would say, well, we've got killer Coda labs that show you how to build all this, but this is what it all looks like put together. Okay. Sure. Yeah. If you go on our Discord, it's all right here under presentations. So yeah, all of these are up on Discord. Yeah, everything's up here. Just gotta go find it, or just ask me on there, and I'll find it for you. Schizophrenic, you said, when I say server, do I mean server hardware, server software, both? When I say host, box, server, node, you know, any of those things, I typically mean a stood up, pingable, on the network Linux server of some type. That's typically what I mean when I say that. So hardware. So well, and it can be physically hardware. So I have a lot of physical boxes that are stood up, but it could also be VMs because I also touch VMs, which only like surprisingly the difference between a physical box and a virtual machine from interactions on most cases are not that different as long as they're both stateful. If they're stateless, different considerations have to happen. From a speed standpoint, it's absolutely different. You get a lot of overhead with virtual machines that you don't get with physical boxes. So if you block ICMP, it's not a server. Fair enough. If I can get into it via SSH, right? But is it interacting in some way that I can put into an inventory? And we were talking about inventories this week in the automation course. So okay, I've gone far afield, but these are the things that we do in the lab. All those things that I just drew are the things we do. I think I'm a big fan of a book collection. I think that you should have a collection of books for reading and reference. I was talking about this earlier, even with my college students earlier today. I was telling them, like, Stack Overflow has kept the internet running for years, right? It's like a joke, but like, hey, go check on Stack Overflow. Let me Google that for you. 90% of the time, any tech question would take you to Stack Overflow. But I did hear, sadly, when ChatGPT was released a few years ago, that 90% of traffic dropped off of Stack Overflow, and that's kind of sad. Which is funny because those tools are just chewing stuff out of Stack Overflow anyways. But anyways, I think the internet, that's my second point, I think the internet's great for referencing things. You know, I got a problem with some, old Red Hat 8 box that has, kernel 4.6 on it or something. I think 4.6 might have been only up to 7, but whatever version of the kernel it's on. And I need to go ask a question about it. The internet's great for that. But if I need to like deeply reference something or I need to know things, there's a lot of rigor and correctness around a published book. Even if it's an online published PDF, there's a lot of correctness around it. So I find like if I want to really dig into something and I'm like, I got to know this better, I'm not going to go read internet forums where people are arguing over fucking who's more elite with, an old version of Debian or some kind of Arch Linux. That kind of stuff isn't going to do it for me. I want to read something from somebody who, spent some time, had 10 different people review it, that kind of stuff. There's a lot more rigor to that. There are paid for good bundles on Humble Bundle. They're typically like $20 to $30, but you get a lot of stuff. There's our book. I have a book. The only thing around here that anybody can pay for is this book, which is the LeanPub book that I put together. And that just goes over our free labs. So the labs are free. You don't even need the book. But the book is something that's like, it goes a little deeper on stuff. And then there's free books. There's a tremendous amount of free books online, guys. The SRE Google books are probably the best books for free on the web that have to do with the topic of high availability of systems, which I've told you guys often, if you want to be in operations, if you want to be on an operations team, the number one KPI, key performance indicator, that you will run into is 100%, it's uptime. That's your number one KPI. The second one right under that is security. But the number one thing that you're going to be measured on an operations team is how up your system is. How much does your system respond to things that it needs to? They also have monthly memberships that you can read the books. Nice. Schizophrenic, that whatever you posted doesn't come through. it gets all asterisked out. But if you drop something in Discord and let me know, I'll show it. It'll be my risky click of the day. I always tell people, go drop something in Discord, and then I can see it that way. So, all right. Oh yeah, and these are all just free presentations people have done in our more. We got a lot of people in the community. We're almost at 4,300 people. So, all right. This is maybe the most important thing I could tell you to do. If you said, hey, Scott, the topic is how do I excel in the engineering field after college? But again, if you didn't go to college, that's fine. This could be for anybody. I think immersion in technology and keeping your finger on kind of like the pulse, right? You're checking the pulse of the system and knowing what's going on is probably the most relevant thing you can do, right? So I think technology podcasts are great if they're around topics that interest you. So you want to get into any type of, cybersecurity, any of that kind of stuff. I often caution people not to get sucked into infotainment. There's a time and a place to be entertained. Watch a show, do something that's interesting to you, relax your mind, read a book, whatever, that are not technology related. But if you told me, hey, Scott, I've been studying 5 hours a day by watching this streamer, and oh, he's funny, and oh, he's doing all this stuff, and he's leak coding with his stuff, and oh, it's so fun to watch him. I'd be like, well, what have you learned? I might even argue as a smaller component of that, I'm not always teaching stuff on here. I'm not always talking about stuff I'm normally talking tech, but like I'm not always teaching stuff. But I would tell you, like, there's kind of like some things are just infotainment. They're just entertaining you about technology. And yeah, that's probably going to give you some of the terminology and stuff, but I don't think there's a lot of value in that for me. I don't spend any time with that kind of stuff. And I'd give examples, but I don't want to give examples of other people. I would use them as bad examples of people to waste time with. But one of the most important things I think you can do is get in a Slack, a Discord, a Usenet group around people that are doing the same stuff as you. Find people that are doing similar stuff and go sit with them and see how they're building stuff, see what they think. There's a Werewolf user group. I joined that because I use Werewolf all the time at work. I've probably deployed close to 16,000 computers in the last year, servers for different government projects with Werewolf under the hood. So Werewolf was the cluster manager of the different high performance compute. I've trained people on Werewolf. They flew me out to Hawaii to train people. I was like, oh no, I got to go to Hawaii for a week to train people on this big high performance compute cluster. Oh no, I'm bringing my wife with me. It was funny, but I think it's funny. But they sent me out there for that. And then it's like, find stuff that's interesting, right? Like North American Measure Camp. One of my buddies, my buddy Jared, he got into Google Analytics and data analytics off of web pages, like web scraping for a big e-commerce site. And he did all of that stuff through, learning on his own and Measure Slack. So Measure Slack runs Measure Camp. But if you guys haven't heard of Measure Slack, they're like, I don't know, I think last time I heard there were close to 30,000 people in there doing, and they're pretty active community, doing not data science at the side, but more like data analytics and pipelining and pulling information off of web pages, back end like Google Analytics and tracking type stuff. That's what they do. What's the other one that's big? There's an Adobe one too that's real big with that. But Measure Slack does all of that stuff. I'd tell you, get involved in open source projects. If you're willing to write and debug code, you can work on a project tonight. Tell you go work on the Werewolf project. In fact, I already have a few guys that said they're going to go work on it. There's a lot of work to do over there. A lot of stuff to write, a lot of stuff to cut your teeth a little bit on the industry. Now, that is technically volunteering, right? It's not paying you anything, but I mean, hey, if you're trying to get something on the resume and have somebody that vouches for you or possibly hires you, because I'm telling you, Werewolf's blown up. And the company that runs Werewolf is CIQ, and they're the same ones that run Rocky Linux as well. So Rocky, CIQ, Apptainer. So CIQ is the company that runs Rocky, Werewolf, Apptainer, Ascender. There's a whole bunch of tools that are like kind of going places, I think. And then, okay, so get involved in open source projects. There's a bunch of high performance compute stuff. I'm always trying to tell you guys again the high performance compute. Now, high performance compute assumes that you know Linux, networking, and storage at least at a high level. Like at least the topics and the understanding of it. So I would tell you, go spend time. These are projects that will teach you that stuff for free. You can even contribute on these projects right here. I remember this one's probably about 3 years old, 4 years old now, and this one's probably only just over a year old. And this one is from the HPSF.io, is the same guys that do cloud. What is it? The Linux. Let's go click it. It's the big cloud native, right? Yeah, by the Linux Foundation. Here it is. So they've got all kinds of stuff in here that'll teach you stuff, and all kinds of stuff they'll show you reference architecture. I think there's a lot of value there. There's hundreds of free labs online on Killer Coda. I can't tell you enough how much I think, like how well I think of Killer Coda. Not just my labs on there, but all the other people's labs. Great. There's a bunch of government resources. There's I tell people all the time, right? So I work with NOAA, but there's a bunch of data science. That's NOAA, National Oceanographic Atmospheric Agency. There's a whole bunch of. They'll teach you all the stuff that they do for free, and they've got all these different seminars that are out there. I'll pull this up. This should work. I think they changed their I think their cert might have failed because of maybe the shutdown did it. Anyways, their thing's normally working. But then there's also all the data.gov. If you guys have never seen all the open data sets out there in the world, look at this. They have, how many are they up to now? Last I had checked, it was 310,000. It's 364,000 data sets. Let's say we wanted to do like LA crime. LA crime has huge data sets. Oh, let's just look at crime, and then I think we could go down to like local government. We could find, anyways. The point is we could find all kinds of stuff. Yeah, Robdon, I think volunteering for bolstering your resume is probably valid. If you were already going to play with this stuff as a hobby anyways, why not be playing with it as a hobby working on something, right? That's my thoughts on it. Like if you're like, hey, I'm going to spend 2 hours a night learning Linux, go work on an open source project too. That's my thoughts. But and then a review, we talked about learning how you learn. It's very important, understanding where you're at in the cycle. You try to pick something up new and it's just grating and difficult and just hard to do. Maybe that was grating. Yeah, not grading. Learning how you learn, very important. And then certifications. Go study a body of knowledge. Even if you don't take the cert, learn the stuff, because that's what people are looking for. Home labs, professional projects, personal projects, you don't have to pay a bunch of money. You can go do a lot of the stuff up in the cloud, which subsequently teaches you a lot about the cloud. So double power there if you're trying to get into cloud stuff. Get a book collection. You can find a lot of books online when you're first in your career, but later on you might want to just flip them $20 because, right, it's a nice way to pick up books and stuff. And then again, I probably couldn't tell you I couldn't tell you anything I think that's more valuable than this. Go sit with the engineers and talk the way that engineers talk. Because engineers talk a certain way with other engineers. They talk a certain way about technology, and you'll learn how to do this stuff by sitting with the other people that are doing it. And most people, I think most people are kind of like me. They want to pass on the information. Right? I don't want to be the only person that knows any of this stuff. All right, and then I always say mentor others. If you're at the top of your company and there's nobody else to train you to be a mentee, start being a mentor to the other people. Even if you're by yourself and you just start documenting things better, that is still a form of mentorship for the next guy. So, all right. And then questions, well, I say email me, but just message me on Discord if you guys need me for anything. All right, so that was that. What did we do? That was almost 2 hours. The wife should be getting home soon, so I'll probably get off of here. But, you guys got the Discord. I think Robodon's been giving you guys the link to the Discord. Everything down there is free. You can hang out. We don't charge you anything to kick it with us. Get in there. Do this stuff, right? Like, I don't think any of this stuff is unattainable for you guys. For people that want to learn this stuff and get better, I think you guys can definitely do it. So, all right. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go drop to my end of stream. We don't really have enough people here to raid anywhere, so I do appreciate the people that did